Hey everyone, so I thought it was about time to talk some more Koreans and find some cool builds that work in Challenger and Grandmaster in Korea right now. I'll link to their profiles down below if you fancy looking at them a little bit more, and there's also a list of them in the description. The first stop we're taking today is going to be looking at a jungler, and we're going to be looking at Quinn. Weirdly enough, I saw a few people doing this, but we're going to look at one of the junglers for SKT T1, which is Haru. So your farm speed and stuff in the jungle actually isn't that bad at all. You're going to have your Harrier procs. You can also jump onto them. You can get some distance and kite them around pretty much like a Nidalee would. Quinn is really good at invading because of the blind though, and the damage potential. Like, Quinn is kind of designed to be a 1v1 champion, and the games that I watched of them doing this pretty much had them invading, like even from very early into the game at like level 3. The runes are pretty normal. Cheap shot works with an E slow pretty sure, and the rest is just move speed and auto based like you would take on a normal Quinn. I say normal Quinn, we don't really play her very much, but normally you do have like a lot of AD and the move speed, and this is the same. You rush your warrior and then you have your Moe boots and your Ghost Blade. Ghost Blade is actually a really good jungle item. Like, if you take everything else out of it, you have 40 out of combat move speed plus the active. You've already got quite a lot of move speed from your Relentless Hunter, and then when you have this out of combat as well, it definitely adds up. So with like your Mobies, that and her ultimate, she zooms around ganking like absolute crazy. So that's quite a lot of burst because you have a fair amount of AD, you have some arm pen as well, but you're going to round out your build with a blade and a rapid fire, which is a little bit strange, but it's got a lot of attack speed and AD all together, so it's pretty well rounded. If you want to think of it like this as well, it's basically like Camille Jungle a little bit, where she was really good 1v1 and then ganked a ton. That's pretty much what Quinn is going to do. So next up we have a very weird pick, but also a very strong one, like probably one of the most legitimate in the entire video, which is going to be Vlad and Yuumi bot lane. Deft has been crushing Korean Challenger with this setup over the past couple of days, past couple of weeks, I guess, actually. And it seems like when Yuumi is open and on his team, he'll pick Vlad. A big part of that is just because there's really good synergy between the two. Like, Yuumi is going to help Vlad early levels, where he isn't going to be the strongest, and kind of get through them into the parts that he actually wants to fight. She then boosts his AP by 16% later into the game, which is quite a lot, but that extra AP also gives him more health because of his passive, I believe. It also covers up one of Vlad's biggest problems. So everybody kites him around, right? They run away. If you can't get into fights, if you don't have your flash or something, then you can't do any damage. Yuumi is so good at like fixing that. She's got the slows to chase people down. You can never run away from a Yuumi anyway. You can heal a bit more, you can buff up your Vlad, and even lock them in place with your ultimate. It's kind of like a wet dream for Vlad. It's kind of like Vlad on steroids, I guess. You have all this setup for all of his damage. That is also where the runes come in a little bit more, because most Vlads run phase rush, right? It lets you chase people down and kind of stick to them because you need the move speed. Deft though goes electrocute. It's more damage, not normal though. It's actually pretty bad on normal Vlad, I think, but because Yuumi is giving him the way into fights and slowing everybody, he can swap to the damage instead. You've still got your double healing, you still have your cooldown reduction from Transcendence and Nimbus Cloak in there, so you have your key runes. You can just take more damage on your keystone. I don't know if it's specific to this bot lane or not, but Yuumi actually rushed a Twin Shadows in every single one of the games played with him. It's pretty good anyway for Yuumi, I think, but for Vlad again, it's double slow to let him chase people down, and that's pretty much what this entire thing is about. Next up, we're going to look at a mid laner. So as weird as it sounds, Nocturne mid is probably not weird enough on its own for me to actually put it in this video anymore, because we have looked at it before, and I think it's like relatively known that he's not that bad mid. Normally though, you run a fully 30 build and you just try and snipe everybody down, basically just rush a Dust Blade and play like normal Nocturne. This guy though does it a little bit differently. So he is going to rush his Tiamat, which is normal. You need it for the wave clear, just like a Talon really. You push out with the Tiamat and then you roam. After that though, it gets a little bit different. So he rushes into a Phage and then he gets Berserker Greaves, which is kind of weird. It just gives loads of attack speed and a bit of health. It lets you kite more, which is kind of cool, but then he rushes into a Black Cleaver. After that, we're going to go into Spear of Sojin. So we basically have loads of health and then loads of cooldown reduction. This build is 40% cooldown reduction with 2 items. So you basically just run around and ult as much as possible. You're going to be able to farm really well. This guy's CS totals are absolutely insane, basically because he can just AFK farm and then roam and ultimate. You'd be surprised still, you actually do a lot of damage. These items both have a lot of AD on them anyway. I think Spear has 60 and Black Cleaver has 40. So it's still going to be 100 AD, loads of health, and loads of cooldown reduction. After that, he does normally go for a Guardian Angel as well, which is kind of standard. So you dive in, you're going to have that revive if they kill you, if they manage to kill you anyway, because you are pretty tanky. There are a couple of other guys in Korean Challenger and Grandmaster playing Nocturne mid, but this is the only one doing this build. The others are running lethality, and I actually think this makes a little bit more sense and turns him into basically just an ult machine and a really good roamer. The next pick we're going to look at, we have looked at before actually in one of these videos, but I've seen it loads in Korean Challenger, like loads. And I think somebody even ran it in Pro Play as well. But basically, Volleybet is a brutal kill lane if you play it as support. You run Aftershock, you charge in, you flip people, you do decent bite damage anyway, but you just don't die. You have Aftershock for the first like couple of seconds in the fight, and then you're very tanky anyway, but then you have your passive healing, and it just is not easy to get through at all. You can also cancel dashes with your E, which is more damage, but messes up a lot of champions bot lane. A lot of champions do have dashes like Lucian, for example, but also champions like Yuumi, I think with a W that counts. At least I saw a lot of volleys going against Yuumi as sort of like a soft counter. So if you're fed up with playing against Yuumi, maybe you want to try your volley. Even without the dash stuff, like she just can't defend her AD really at all. Like if volley charges in, what are you going to do, right? You're going to slow him with the Q maybe and then pray he doesn't get in range because you got nothing else. It's a rough matchup for Yuumi for sure. It's also rough for a lot of champions actually, but it's just a really like fun and very strong kill lane. Most of the time, you're going to be grabbing your support item and then Righteous Glory, by the way, not really a normal support item, but it turns you into an engage tool later into the game and just a really big front line. I also actually have another support like that works very similarly, which is Camille. This isn't as common at all, so we won't spend as long on it. Volley is actually a legit pick, I think, like everybody's playing him, but this Camille is more of a pocket pick. It's Aftershock as well, of course. If you want to take anything off meta and make it work, Aftershock is a good start, but it's basically just dive in, stun, and kill someone. It's a really good engage tool, but it's also a really good gank setup. You press R, they can't escape the ult, and it's sort of a free kill if the jungler comes down. It's the same thing as well when you start to roam around, because you're basically like Camille jungle, right? Except less damage, less items, but probably a bit more tanky. This guy as well runs Zeke's a lot, so when they're locked into the ultimate, they're taking a lot more damage, and it actually makes a lot of sense. The only thing is you have to really hit your E, like your dive in, otherwise you don't proc the Aftershock, and you're pretty much a sitting duck. Next up is actually a repeat appearance, I guess, for this guy. Like, he's been in our videos before for a Kassadin build. Not sure how many of you will remember, but basically the short version is that he plays Kassadin as a tank with Exhaust and Barrier top lane with Unsealed Spellbook. He's really hard to kill and shut down. Like, he's hyper mobile because he's a Kassadin anyway. He has some good base damage. He's very tanky with all the items he has. So he builds up mana and then runs around killing stuff with his ultimate later into the game. I'll link to that down below as well as this other one that we're going to look at. But if that's banned, he whips out some good old Taric top lane. One of the first things I saw about this when I saw him playing it was he was just like kind of collecting random component items instead of completing them. Catalyst is so OP on Taric because it works with your healing. So when you spend your mana, it gives you some more health, right? But when you take some damage, it gives you mana. Those work so well for Taric. It's just pretty insane. But then he normally runs Warden's Mail against AD because it slows attack speed. And it's actually a very good item just on its own. If he's running the good old Glacial Augment as his keystone, then he goes for Righteous Glory after that, so he can chase people down, but it actually also works with the Glacial. When he runs into fights and he chases somebody and he actually catches them and like the AoE slow comes out, he slows everybody around him with the slow ray from Glacial. A lot of people don't realize, but Taric actually does like a huge amount of damage. When he runs and like fights in lane phase, like the auto slow means that he can whack more with his passive damage, and his passive actually does a ton. You weave it between your spells, so you have like your stun to start with, you have a heal, you have a shield, so basically he's kind of too tanky, but he will eventually just slap you in the face until you die. You'd be surprised how good Taric top lane can actually be, either with this setup, or you can even run press attack as well. He does that sometimes in easier matchups, or if he wants to just like batter people because it works so well with his passive. Now, another thing that I've noticed as well a lot was all the lethality Varus popping up again when I was looking through all of these different profiles. This is the Archer Varus build, basically, where you stack up your lethality and you nuke everybody from a million miles away. I actually love this build. It's really fun. I think a lot of you guys enjoy playing it as well. And I saw about half of the people playing it, probably about that, running this instead with Spellbook. So Unsealed Spellbook is pretty cool. You actually get more cooldown reduction this way anyway with your runes in general because you have double from Inspiration and Transcendence. You get more mana with Mana Flow Ban and Biscuits, which is going to add to your total, and you get free boots, right? And then a bunch of sums to swap to. You actually don't need heal that much when you're firing at the very back of fights. Like, it's okay, but TP is definitely better for the lane phase. You take it to get back to lane quicker or have like really good base timings and kind of get like a lead that way. And then you swap it to heal if you need it, or like you want to your Ignite or Ghost or Cleanse or whatever you want. Remember, this build is all about making your arrows hit super hard. It's not going to be tier anymore either. It's a bit too slow. So we go Ghost Spade, Dust Spade, Edge of Night, and then stuff like Last Whispers to just make your arrows really sting. It is pretty good in this meta. Honestly, you have a lot of weaker ADs like Kai'Sa who are shorter range that you can really bully, and you also have the Comet Ash build, and Varus is basically doing the exact same thing. So they just poke each other, and Varus probably does it a little bit better to start with. So we're going to go on to some junglers now, and I know there's a lot of junglers in this video, but honestly, most of the weird picks are just in the jungle now. First up, we have Poppy Jungle. I've noticed a few players doing this and trying it out, and we're going to focus on a one trick. So it's Electrocute Poppy Jungle, but you go Moe Boots and tank instead of warrior. I know we've had this before before where we've had a Trinity Force and Warrior stacking Poppy, I think, who does like stupid amounts of damage. But this is actually just Cinder Hulk. It makes you properly tanky and you do decent damage anyway thanks to cheap shot that you're running, electrocute as well, the base damage of your abilities, which is pretty good, and also your Dead Man's is going to add to it as well. Honestly, as a tank, like your kit is designed to not really need damage items to work anyway, so that is why we can get away with it. You're going to rush your mode boots to start the game anyway, and then when you use your W and you try and gank people, like they can't dash away, right? So they can't escape anyway, plus you're really fast. It's actually pretty insane. Like it's really hard to escape a ganking Poppy, as weird as that sounds. Even though we are building full tank, you're kind of playing like a hybrid tank and damage jungler really. You're not going to be the tankiest ever, but you're very good 1v1 because of your stun, and you can actually duel a lot of other junglers. You have pretty good farming, like you're not going to be that slow. You can gank pretty well. You can duel people, as we've said, and you don't even scale that badly either, but you will end up being kind of like a damage soaker at the end. She's a really good counter to some specific junglers though, just like Gragas can't E, right? Lee Sin can't Q, Jarvan can't EQ combo either. It's really hard for some of the most popular junglers in the game at the moment to play against her. Next up, we're going to look at our new champion in the game, Kiana Jungle. This is sort of weird because right now, I think Jungle is barely played and probably one of the lowest win rates as well. We're going to look at Spirit for this, and he's really good at making these style junglers work. So he starts with Red, and then he goes to Krugs, and then he goes to Chickens afterwards. She's got very good AoE damage, and she barely takes any damage actually from that start and gets level 3. Her damage is really high anyway when you try and fight another champion. It's a little bit like Kha'Zix, I think. It works in a very similar way at least. You can't expect to do like a ton early, but if you survive till 6, she becomes really strong. You max your Q, then your E, by the way, for more mobility, and finally into your W. Runes are pretty normal, but he runs tenacity and precision, which massively helps avoid getting locked down, which is so important as an assassin. And normally you run your Mo boots to rush around and gank a bit more. That's a very Korean thing, but I think it's actually pretty good anyway. And then Red Smite Warrior, as you'd expect, and then run Dustblade. The idea is just to run in and nuke people down. You can even stealth out of a bush as well, which lets you rush into a lane if you have the brush element. You can also root people as well, but I think as a jungler, especially when you're fighting around dragons or barons, like using your ultimate there, it can be so clutch. It can do so much damage and be so effective. So those are going to be some weird picks from Korea. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and you found something that you can go and try. Please try them in normal games, by the way, instead of ranked, so I don't get flamed as hard. Actually, it was a bit harder to find these this time. A lot of Korea are playing standard now, which is pretty boring, but hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching until the very end. And for now, I will leave you with robots.